Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of this YouTube channel and the artbyro.com website where you can find over 200 art and drawing tutorials. So check that out if that seems like something you might be interested in. Today we're going to be drawing a little cartoon mouse on an artist trading card. If you're not familiar with artist trading cards, I think you really should find out more about them, which you can do in the description box. There's a link in there. Go ahead and check that out. But you don't have to do your work on artist trading cards. That's just what I like to do. But you can do yours on any size or type of paper that you want. And also I'll be using markers today, so if you want to learn more about using markers, stick around for that towards the end of the video. But again, you can use any medium that you want for this. So let's go ahead and go on over to the art studio and get started. So today I'm going to be drawing a mouse. And like I usually do, I'm doing mine on an artist trading card. If you're not familiar with those, check out the description box. There's a freebie in there. It's just a little beginner's guide to artist trading cards, what they are, how to cut your own, some other additional information in there. So check that out if you're not familiar. And today we're going to be drawing a mouse. And this is going to be just kind of a little cartoon mouse. And also, if you've been following me for any length of time, then you know I like to start things out with some basic shapes. So I want to start with a circle for the head, and then kind of a oval circular shape for the body. And I want the head to be bigger than the body because I'm going for kind of a cute, cartoony type of a look. And this is going to be the center point of the head. Here's the body. And then we can do some feet if we want. He's going to be sitting. He's going to have some arms coming out here. And all I'm doing is just putting some real rough guides in here for how it's going to look so I can get an image kind of overall of what it's going to look like. I want his ears to be fairly big. Don't worry too much if they have to run off the edge of the paper a little bit. That's not going to hurt anything. Don't worry about trying to squeeze everything completely on the paper. If elements, a little bit of the ear goes off, it's fine. It's not going to ruin the drawing. So as I'm looking at this, I noticed that with the body being as small as it is, visually it looks like he's gonna tip over. So, and this is why I like doing the shapes first. One of the reasons why, there's many reasons. But I want to make the body slightly bigger so he looks a little bit more stable. I don't want to make the head any smaller because I do want him to have a fairly large head compared to the body because it will make him look a little bit cuter. It's kind of that like almost like a little baby mouse type of a feel to it. And these are just real rough right now. And then once we get things going, we'll refine the drawing, clean it up, and then we're going to outline it and color it anyway, and these pencil lines will all go away. But we just want a rough idea of what it's going to look like, where everything's going to go. So I want, here's where his nose is going to go. His nose and his mouth is going to go in here. That's that muzzle area or whatever that would be called on a, I don't know what it's called on a mouse, but that right there. So his eyes are going to go here, and then the nose will be in here, and then we can put his mouth in here, give him a little smile. This is going to stay here. This isn't just a guide, but that's actually part of his face. So now we can just start refining everything, cleaning it up, You can erase some of the pencil lines if you need to, or just make the ones you want to keep a little bit darker. And then when we outline this with a pen, and then go back in here and erase those will all disappear anyway. So you really only need to erase them if you feel like they're kind of getting in your way or causing some confusion of what lines you're keeping and what ones you're not. So now we want to clean up the shape of the head a little bit. You can make it round, or sometimes instead of making it perfectly round, you might want to drop this part down, bring the top up a little bit, just to give it a little bit more of a little more advanced shape, I guess you could say, instead of just being perfectly round. It doesn't really matter. You can make his head round and that would be completely fine. So I'm just darkening this up. Doesn't need to be super dark, but just so everything's clean and you can see what's going on in your drawing. Like I said, we're still going to outline this and color it in with markers, so all of the pencil lines will eventually get erased anyway. So it's not a super big deal to get things cleaned up right now, just so you can see what's going on. Try to keep it symmetrical as much as possible. I always say to keep your circles as close to perfect as you can, but without stressing out too much about them being perfect. So the last thing you want to do is focus so much on things being perfect that you feel like your drawing is failed because it's not completely perfect, because getting things perfectly symmetrical or having your circles being perfectly round, it's very hard to do. So as long as you're close and it looks okay, then that's good enough. So like for the shape of his head, I want the shape of his head to be as close to symmetrical as possible, but not to the point where I'm starting to stress out about it because it's not perfect. Because what tends to happen is as you fix one part of it, now the other part don't look right. And eventually what you end up doing is you'll lose interest in your drawing, and quite possibly in drawing altogether, because you feel discouraged and you feel like you failed and it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. You know, the same thing for the ears. We want the ears to match. We want them to be symmetrical. We want them to be the same size, but not to the point where it's gonna ruin the experience of the drawing, if that makes sense. So try to make your drawings look good. Try to keep things even if it's supposed to be symmetrical, but if you're not to the skill level, or if you're just having an off day, then sometimes you have to let go of that perfectionism a little bit and just kind of let it be whatever it's going to be, and less than perfect isn't gonna be the end of the world, for sure. It's better that you actually can get your drawings done and enjoy it, because the more you enjoy the process of creating your art, the more likely it is you're gonna want to do more, and that's kind of the goal. So now I'm just doing the arms. I want it to look like he's kind of resting his arms on his belly. That's we're going for cute, so that's kind of a cute pose, having his arms coming down on top of his belly. So some of these lines we can get rid of. This eraser, this click eraser, is really nice for getting into these smaller areas. I really like it. So now most of his body is going to be covered up. I think I want to bring this back part of it out a little bit. Make him a little bit more plump down here. And his feet are going to cover this up, but sometimes you need to draw through some of this other stuff so it all connects and looks right. Sometimes if you try to skip through different things, it doesn't carry over very well. So most of his leg we're not going to see, because the foot's going to be covering it up. And then his body's going to be here. Try to clean this up a little bit so you can see what I'm trying to do down here. And then this foot, I think we need to bring off the edge of the paper. Like I said, don't worry if stuff comes off the edge of the paper a little bit. That's not going to hurt anything. And then we're really not going to see much of this leg because of the body. And if we try to draw the leg up here, it's going to look weird. So I think if the body comes down, I think we'll just leave that. And then this hand I don't like. Make this hand a little bit bigger so it matches the other one better. There. And then the only thing we have left to do is the tail. And the tail is definitely going to need to go off the edge of the paper. We could curl it back around if we want to. That might be cute. Have it kind of curling. So these are all, art is really just about making a series of decisions about what you want to do. So we can have that curl around, or it can just go off the edge of the paper. Either way is fine. But I think that's it for the drawing part of it. So now what we need to do is outline this and get it ready to add in some color. Okay, so for the outline, what I like to use are these Sharpie pens. This is actually the wrong one. This is a fine point. So this has a pretty skinny point on it. This is the one I usually use for my art. This is a medium point pen. This has a little bit bigger tip on it. They're Sharpie pens. They're not the same thing as the Sharpie markers, the thin, I think they're called like extra fine, the white ones, the white with the black cap on it. This is different. Those are more of like a felt marker, where this is a pen, but these are really, really nice for outlining drawings. So this is usually what I'll use. And I'm literally just going to trace right over top of my pencil lines everything I want to keep. And then after I have everything outlined, I can take this big eraser and just go directly over top of everything and erase all the pencil lines, and I'll have a nice clean outline drawing, and then it will be ready to add in some color. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the black of the eyes in with the pen as well. Now you can do this with a different color besides black if you don't want to use black. You could use a marker. You could not outline it if you don't want it outlined. So it's just a matter of how you want your drawing to look when it's done. Like I said, I like to use markers, so I'll probably use markers on this. So it's just a matter of personal preference. You could use color pencils, you could use paint. It doesn't really matter how you finish your drawing. So you'll need to decide if outlining it in black is right for you and your style and the look you're going for. And that could change also. Like right now and for a while, I've been doing my art this way, outlining them with the black and coloring them with marker. At some point, I'll probably get kind of bored with that and want to switch it up or try something different. And that's pretty common for most people. Whether it's from boredom or you just want to experiment or you want to try a different style, or maybe your style just simply evolved a little bit. But you can try something, experiment. I think it's always a good idea to try different things and experiment with new methods for how you want to do your artwork and how you want to finish it. And that's one of the big reasons why I've been doing my art on artist trading cards, which I didn't always do. But what I discovered is once I started doing things on artist trading cards, it allowed me to experiment a little bit more because they're not very big. They're big enough that you can do what you need to do on them, but not so big that they take hours and hours to finish. So if I was drawing this and not making a video and trying to explain things at the same time, I could probably do this start to finish in probably roughly about a half hour, if I had to guess. Which means that I could do a bunch of these if I wanted to. Even if you have limited time, you can fit a half hour in pretty easily. And some types of drawings or different types of artwork would take even less. Some would take more. Some would take less. But I could say that in roughly about a half hour, I could finish an entire drawing on an artist trading card. Where if you're doing something like this on like a sketchbook page, you're definitely going to take longer than a half hour to get your drawing finished. So that's one of the big benefits of doing them. And then I can put these in a binder. There's sleeves that you can put in a 3-ring binder that have little pouches in them. And it makes a nice little, like kind of a portfolio of your artwork where you can flip back through and look at it. Or artist trading cards, per the name, they're intended to be traded to other artists for their cards, which you don't have to do, you can. And that's a lot of fun to do that. But even if you don't have any interest in trading your artwork, it's kind of cool to have a nice little portfolio with stuff in there that you can go back and look at. And plus it doesn't take up a ton of room. You don't have piles of drawings everywhere. So that's a nice thing about it also. So after I erase, once you erase the pencil line, sometimes there's little gaps in the pen and the outline because the pencil covers it up a little bit. So once you erase it, sometimes you'll see these little gaps. So I like to go back over it again and clean it up a little bit, tighten up those edges. Plus it makes the outline a little bit darker, a little thicker of an outline. So I'm going to go ahead and go back over top of all this. I'm going to grab some markers to use, and then we'll add some color to this guy and finish him up. I'm back with my markers. So what I like to do is I'll take these little scrap pieces of cardstock that are left over from when I cut out my artist trading cards, and I use that to test out my colors, because the way I do my markers, I like to have 2 or 3 of each color. So for pink, I'll have a light pink and a dark pink, and then I can try them out on the scrap paper to see what they look like, because when using markers, if you want them to blend, they need to be close enough to each other, but enough of a difference that you can see a little bit of variation. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure you have alcohol-based markers, and you want to work while the markers are still wet. So what I do is I put my lighter color down first, and then I put the darker color down, and then I go back over where they meet with the lighter marker. You can also use a colorless blender that will come in sets of markers, or I'm sure you can buy them individually. But if you buy any type of sets of markers, usually they come with a colorless blender. I don't use the colorless blender too much. I usually just go back over it with the lighter marker, and I get asked quite a bit if that will ruin your markers, and it will not. It doesn't transfer on to the other marker. So there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. It's not going to hurt anything. But you do want to make sure you're working in kind of small sections at a time, so that the alcohol in the marker doesn't evaporate, so you can blend them if that's the look you're going for. So it just really depends on the style that you have, the look that you're going for. If you want it to have a little bit flatter look to it, then you might just want to do solid blocks of color. But I'll just do this for the whole thing. So I'm right now just doing everything that is going to have pink. I'll go ahead and put the pink in there. And then for this little muzzle area, or whatever it would be called on a mouse, it's white, but I don't want to leave it just plain white. So I'm going to use this light gray and add a little bit of color in there, just so that it's not plain white. Now this would be where I might want to use a colorless blender, because I'm only using one marker, and I could soften up that edge where I put this gray down, but that gray's pretty light, so it's probably not necessary. And these, they just say colorless blender on them. And they're pretty standard. They come with any set, I think, that I've bought, whether it was a really cheap one or a nicer set of markers. They pretty much all come with that colorless blender, I think. So now I'm going to move on to the gray areas. And doing the same thing, I'm going to start with the light color and fill in. I like filling in the whole area with the lighter color. And then I'm going to take the darker one and put that anywhere where I want that darker color to be in there. And then just going back over the edges and smoothing that out with the lighter one again. Now, as you go over top of this light area, each layer you put on there, it's going to make it a little bit darker. So just keep that in mind when you're putting your colors down. But I'll fill the whole area in, even though I know this is going to be darker. One reason is because it'll give you more control over where you're putting the darker color down, and you can make some adjustments as you're working, where if you just put the darker color down, you're kind of stuck with it before you can see what it's going to look like. So it does use a little bit more markers by doing it that way. And also the other thing is, when you layer your markers, they look different than if they're not layered. So this darker color laid over top of the lighter color is going to look different than if you just put the dark color down. So it's hard to go back and forth with your colors to make adjustments, where if you put the light color down first, it gives you a lot more control with what you're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up. I'm going to finish up the body and then do a little something in the background, and then we'll be almost done with this, and I'll come back to finish it up. So I have the mouse all colored in. I added a little bit of blue to the background just to brighten up the background a little bit. So the last thing I need to do, this is optional, but I like to add some white in the background. And I'm using a jelly roll pen, just a white jelly roll pen. If I can get it to work. So I like to just add some white over top of the marker just to break up these big blocks of color a little bit. So you do want to make sure that marker is dry. If not, then your white will just absorb into the moisture from the alcohol. And this is probably still a little bit wet, but I don't have time to let it dry right now. So if you put it on there too soon and the marker's still wet, it's not a big deal. You might just have to go back over top of it again to brighten it up. But it's not going to show up real good on this light gray anyway. So I think that's about it. We added a little bit of white, put some highlights in the eyes. One thing I did want to mention about the markers is that when they start going dry, when they're kind of at the end of their life cycle, they're not going to blend as easily because there's not as much alcohol left in there. But one thing you can do, I use the bullet point quite a bit, the fine tip, because I'm working small on the artist trading cards. But I noticed that the smaller end of the marker will run out before the bigger end. So if you're marker's starting to run out and you're in the middle of a drawing, you might have to just deal with using the bigger end, even though it might be a little bit too big for what you're trying to do. You can try to work with that and get through your drawing if you don't have another marker. It's a little trick to help get through that drawing and get it finished up. But that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I will see you in the next video. Happy creating! Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a like and subscribe if you want to get notified of future videos. And also, don't forget to check out that description box. There's some links in there to our artist trading card guide, as well as the materials that were used in this video and some of my other favorite art supplies. So I appreciate you sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye!